Okay, kind of continuing the due diligence process. The second part here, I wasn't totally sure how I wanted you to do this since you're not in the States. So there's two ways I think we can handle this. One is email, and then one is an old service I used to use and I may use again called Fancy Hands. Um, but we'll get into that here in a second. So the rest of the data sheet here is basically what can we build, time limit, what are we allowed to do, what are we allowed not to do, camping, things like this. Are mobile homes, RVs allowed? There's a lot of stuff on here that requires contacting the county directly and asking them for information. So who we would like to talk to about this is planning and zoning. So if you remember, we're using Hernando County in Florida for our, the example property that we're kind of working through. So all I did was type in Hernando County Planning and Zoning, because all of this stuff here, what can I build, the zoning, time limits, can I put an RV on it, even water and waste and this kind of stuff. This is all going to be, generally speaking, something that we would just ask the planning department. So I just went into Google and typed in, put the county in, Hernando County. It's a good idea to always put the state in there because there's probably a Hernando County, Vermont. Hit search, it still comes up. Click on it, and for you, basically, it's going to be pretty easy. I thought it was going to be kind of difficult, but you see here how they have an email. So I'm working on a template here. So basically, all you have to do would be put in the date, put in dear Hernando County, Florida, planning and zoning. Or if you have a real name, if it lists somebody's real name, you can put it there. And then I'd have you populate the APN number for the property and then the address if it's available so they can look it up. And it'll just be a already done email. I haven't finished this yet, obviously, but I'll just basically just put all the questions down here for them to just essentially type in yes, no, and then email it back to you. So you would basically email them this letter template that I'm working on, this VA request for information letter, and then just wait for them to get it, send it back to you. Request maybe a follow-up email saying, please email me indicating that you've received this. So that's one way of doing it. And then another way of doing it, which I used to do and actually worked pretty well, was you filling out basically the same sheet, but sending it to this company here, which I'll make a more detailed video on how to do that. It's very easy. But Fancy Hands, or maybe a company just like them, actually is a US-based call center. So what they'll do is they'll actually make all these calls for us. So what that means is you would still have to look up the phone number. So the phone number obviously is right here. So you would have to attach the phone number to the data request form. So I'll make that very obvious for you. Whichever route we decide to go, we may use both depending on the county. But you'll have basically a emailable request for information sheet, and then you'll have another one that will be we'll just call it like a Fancy Hands request for information sheet. And on both of those, all you're going to have to do is essentially just populate the land or I'm sorry, the parcel specific information, and then the contact information. So either an email or a phone number, really. And then you'll send those out and just wait for the information to come back. So when the information comes back, you can come back into here and just transfer the data into here. A lot of this stuff, what's really important is, what can we build on the property? It's important to know if we can put an RV or a mobile home on the property, available water and power and stuff like that. It's all this stuff's important. So basically just get as much as you can. It doesn't have to be all populated. I really don't care if there's gas out there or not. Don't really care if there's telephone access out there or not. Believe it or not, a lot of people that buy some of these properties don't want to be connected to the telephone or the internet, believe it or not. So some of this stuff here, fencing, just through your research, looking at the county imagery like we looked at earlier on the county assessor site, or maybe Google Street View. You can see if there's a fence or not, and you can just put that on here, yes or no. Trees and foliage, we already looked via Street View, you can tell, right? So just use your best judgment here, whatever, light in this case, I guess. In this case here, it'd be no. Slope too, you could tell through the imagery that we looked at in the other videos that it's flat, so you could put no. Water features, right? We didn't see any, so that's none. Waterfront, we already know there's none. Then elevation. A lot of times on Google, you can just Google the elevation of a specific area. I use Google Earth as well. Will show you the elevation. This is not super important. Being Florida, it's probably close to sea level. All right, so this is more important. This is going to be more important when we start getting properties out west. Closest metro area. This is something you can do by just putting in, the address here. So we can go Marsh Hawk Road, Weeki Wachee. Okay. Just click on the map. Obviously, if you remember, our property's right here. Right in here. So we'll just step it out, right? So it looks like, and I like to go satellite view just because the squares, sometimes there's nothing on the squares. So, it looks like we're close to the town of Weeki Wachee here. Spring Hill. Looks like a big one. Maybe Sumterville. Crystal River's up here. Tampa, definitely a big one down here. So maybe this is 30 miles away. So use your judgment. Just a couple towns that are close by. So, for here, closest small town, whatever, closest major metro probably is Tampa, right? Because that's a major city. And then closest small towns probably, I don't know. Outside of Weeki Wachee, where the lot is probably Spring Hill. So you can put that in there. View. You don't have to put anything in there if you want. You can probably just put trees. Nearby attractions. We'll get into this later part. We'll get into this last part here in the next video. But as you can see, pretty straightforward with this stuff here. So.